If you guys have never attended a fish convention, I know if you're not a fish person, it sounds a little bit weird, but fish conventions are always held at these giant hotels. There's giant educational speakers going on. Just to my left here, I just walked past the speaker room. There's speakers going on every hour for the whole day, Friday and Saturday. But what we're here for, and what we're going to do today, is the fish show. I'm going to give you guys a quick tour of a fish show and show you what goes on. I'm actually the head judge this year, so I'm going to give you a quick rundown on what it takes to enter a fish, show a fish, and have a fish judge, and what kind of goes on behind the scenes when you're judging fish. All right, guys, these giant fish shows, these things are an absolute must-see event. These things are so cool. If you're a fish keeper in any capacity whatsoever, this is the next level. This is the next step. You can actually bring your fish down from your home, bring it to these events, and the fish get entered into the class where the fish belong, and then each fish is going to get professionally judged, and it's going to get pointed out, and then there's going to be awards and stuff, and the fish here are exceptional. This is the best of the best usually. Now, when you're showing fish, sometimes things are a little bit different. Showing off a nice big Central American cichlid. Now, when you're showing off something like a big Central American cichlid, it's an easy fish to be a contender for some of the big awards because they're showy, they're big, and they're generally aggressive. One thing that we do talk about, we'll go over judging a little bit further down the road, but there's several different categories. There's size. Size is one of them, and size is going to be about what's the total size of the species of fish in question and how big does it get in its natural range. Sometimes we have to take in consideration that species will actually get larger in captivity because they don't have to compete for food, they don't have to compete against predators, there's all sorts of factors. So sometimes they will get a little bit bigger. Size, color, shape, the fins, condition, all these things are all factors that we have to point out as well. But one thing that's also important we have to think about is something called deportment. And deportment is how is the fish going to show? And some fish are a lot easier to show, like this Central American cichlid, because he's not afraid of us. Versus something like an apisto, sometimes a guppy. Some of those fish are a little bit more shy. They like to kind of be a bit more elusive or hide. And when you take them from out of your beautifully landscaped home aquarium and you put them into these bare tanks, sometimes they don't show off as well. And I can give you guys tips of the trade to show how to show these fish off. Some of those fish that are a little bit harder to show as well. The Angelfish Clash is another group of fish that are really, really easy to show. The problem being with angels is because of their shape and their size, some people don't understand how to show them really, really well. This individual here who brought this tank from home knows how to show off an angel. Lots of height, the fish can raise up and the fins don't touch the bottom, and it shows off the fish a lot better than it does in any other standard shaped tank. Much better sized tank for an angelfish. But when you look at the size, these things are all the size of a baseball. These are giant goldfish, and they're all beautiful, fancy goldfish. We got lion's heads, we got ryukas, we got telescopes, we've got orandas, we've got a pearl scale oranda. They're all man-made morphs of goldfish and stuff, but some of these things are absolutely breathtaking. But when you're going to enter a fish like this, and big is great, deportment is great, but every one of those factors that I mentioned before, each one of them is equal in regards to how they're pointed out. They don't all have the same point value, but they all are equal importance. And this guy here, for example, right here, he has a lot of aberrations on one of his anal fins, or on his caudal fin there. See all those little strings of aberrations on that other side there? I don't know if you can see it in the video, but that is something that will definitely affect his point structure. As beautiful as this fish is, this is a standout. This is one of those fish that could easily be voted by everybody that's here for people's choice because he's just such a gorgeous fish. But those little strings and stuff like that are on his tail fin there, those are things that might affect him in regards to the pointing. To a lot of people, this is just a common goldfish. This is a common. This could be even something that you could have bought at your pet store as a feeder fish. But it's a beautiful fish. It's been raised, lots of love, lots of care, and that is a gorgeous looking comet goldfish. Now here we got a beautiful Balanitania bosemani. This little stick here denotes that it's also a care species. Care species are species that are critically threatened or extinct or endangered in the wild. So keeping them in captivity and replicating them in captivity and spreading them around among hobbyists, either through the trade or through these organized fish clubs, is critical importance. Otherwise, this fish is going to be gone forever. But the one thing to note about rainbow fish is they're great, beautiful, stunning fish. They're easy to care for. But generally when you keep them at home, they're always in beautifully well-landscaped tanks, lots of plant life, and that's when you really get them to show off their colors. To bring a giant rainbow like this big male bosemani to a show and put him into an absolutely bare tank takes sometimes a fair bit of work. Now to get that, what I mean by work is you can't just go into your display tank an hour before you're ready to leave for the show, scoop a fish, throw it in a bucket, and bring it down to the show. A lot of people do that. They just generally don't ever point very well because the fish get stressed out. You're throwing them into a very unfamiliar environment and they're not comfortable and they're not going to show their colors. If you really want to show a fish to its best potential, honestly, it takes about 3 months of preparation prior to a show. And the true showmans of the world that have entered fish shows for years, and I'm sure it's the same with other animals, horse shows, dog shows, cat shows, there's a lot of training involved, and fish are no exception. So to train a fish, you think, how am I going to train a fish? I'm not expecting it to sit, jump through hoops. I'm not expecting to do anything, but I'm expecting it to be able to learn to adapt to being in a bare environment that's extremely stressful for it. It's not stressful just because it's in a glass box, but people are walking up, they're putting their face right against the tank, they're tapping the glass, all those things we're not supposed to do. But to get this guy ready for a show, 3 months before I take him out of my display tank, I'd give him a real hard look over. I would look for any damage to any scales, any splits in the fins. Rainbows are often prone for rostral damage or damage to the nose. You know, I look for little aberrations and stuff. And if that's the one that I think is going to be good for the show, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take him out of my, say, 50 or 100 gallon planted tank, and I'm going to put him into a 10 gallon tank somewhere in my fish room. And I'm going to keep him there for a little while. No decorations in there, but at least in my fish room it's a little bit quieter. Still going to give him impeccable water quality up until the show. I'm going to give him the best foods that I can. If I've got live or frozen, that's even better because that's going to give him that extra boost of vitamins and carotenoids to give him that pop of color. And I'm going to give him the best. Then maybe after a week, I'm going to take that tank and I'm going to transfer it to somewhere like my kitchen counter. Your wives or your partners will absolutely love this idea because it gets the whole family involved. And I know my wife absolutely loves it when I bring my hobby upstairs and into the kitchen. Totally doesn't. But if you bring that fish up into the kitchen, he's already used to being in a small bare tank. And he knows you, and he's used to you, and he's probably used to your family. So now you're going to bring him upstairs. You're going to put him into a much more higher stressful area. And then leave him sit there for a couple of days, see how he adapts. If he adapts good, like you haven't noticed much change in his behavior, that's when the next phase comes on. And the next phase is, honestly, it's going to sound a bit cruel, but it's actually to start trying to stress that fish a bit so he can get used to what environment he's going to be used to at the show. Because sometimes it's a pretty stressful environment, lots of people, lots of kids, lots of things we can't control. So basically to get that fish ready for the show, I'm going to be tapping on the glass every morning while I'm having my breakfast. I'm going to be getting right in his face. Some judges or some people that are showing fish will actually take a clipboard, like just an ordinary clipboard, and go near the tank and spend a lot of time with the clipboard so the fish don't associate clipboard is okay. We're okay. But you notice this fish, other than that one time, he's not really stressing out too much from me doing any of this stuff. I'm right here and he's swimming normal, he's fine. That's a proper show fish. So let's see how this guy points out well today, and maybe this might be a contender in the rainbow fish class. Now, catfish are a class that's notoriously difficult, not only to show. Sometimes the plecos and the cory cats, they'll sit on the bottom with their fins erect, and they'll look really, really good. I was actually at a show years ago that an L46 zebra pleco won best of show. And nobody even realized it, but it was stone dead. And it won best of show because plecos, when they die, they go rigid. And all the fins went out, the dorsal went straight up, and it was perfect, albeit it was stone dead. This guy isn't dead. This guy's great. But you're talking about a fish that's 100% nocturnal, wants to hide under a log for its entire life. And now I've got it in a bright room, in a bare tank, brightly lit, with lots of stressors. And this thing isn't affected by it whatsoever. That's a good show fish. Yeah. At these shows, it's not just fish. It's everything pertaining to our aquatic hobby. Anything you keep in an aquarium that's going to require water. So there's plant classes, there's invertebrate classes, so you want to bring in your cool snail, it's just as worthy to win. You want to bring in a shrimp, sure, we can do that too. Here's a beautiful little fan shrimp, you know. But how about axolotls? Very, very unique species it's an amphibian, I guess. It's an amphibian, sound right? I'm no expert on axolotls, but they're very, very cool. Just as worthy the same way. And they're going to get pointed the same way based on what the natural species would look like. Now, very, very often it shows Central American cichlids like this gorgeous red devil here, firemouth cichlids of the Therichthys genus, African Malawi cichlids like some of the big predatory haps, some of the peacocks, some of the mbunas, all big, colorful, aggressive fish that aren't shy. and they love showing off when they're in the show. Those fish are very, very often easily awarded Best of Show. What I absolutely love to do is I judge everything based on its own merit. But what I absolutely love it is at the end of the day, when a nondescript brown fish actually wins the coveted trophy, because it gets everybody crazy. How can that guy not win? Because look at him. But remember, everything is pointed equally. So his size, beautiful. His fins, without looking at him very, very closely, and we do look at him very, very closely, we actually use glass rods or rigid airline tube, and we direct the fish within the tank so we can make sure that we're checking every single fin ray, any splits on the fins, any aberrations on the fins. We're also checking both sides of the fish for any scale dislodgements or anything like that, any sort of scuffs. Something simple is transferring a big cichlid like this using a net, an aquarium net, can often scratch the fish up if he stresses out and freaks out a little bit in the net while you're transferring him to the container. What if in the container that you're going to bring him in is a 5-gallon bucket, it's the standard 5-gallon bucket they use for everything in your fish room, and it's got scratches and stuff like that inside? Well, maybe he's going to scratch himself up before he even gets to the show. And your giant Best of Show that would have killed everybody for dominance in the show, no longer is Best of Show. Now, using that guy as an example, this guy's great. Look at the deportment on this guy. That's what you want to see at a show. Now in this section here, this is a lot of species of fish that are often very, very challenging to show off in fish. Try and take something like a tetra, a danio, a barb, out of a nice, beautiful display tank that's used to being in big numbers, and take one of them out, single them out, and put them separately in a small little glass tank or plastic tank. They often don't show very, very well. But if you follow some of those simple steps of trying to condition them and get them ready for a show, you might have a real good contender. But you can see, a lot of these are not really showing their true colors. But this guy right here, this is what they often call the moonlight gourami. That's exactly what they're supposed to be looking like. They're a big silver gourami. So, you know, that is a fish that's challenging to condition and get ready for a show because anything could happen. His scales are very, very small, so finding any damage on his scale, you might see nothing with that. But when I shine a small flashlight at him, I might see little scratches or aberrations from using the net. Very, very often the pectoral fins get little kinks from being folded in the net. This guy looks pretty good right now looking at him, and he might do very, very well. I'm not judging any of the fish in this video by saying those things, so I have no judgment on any of the fish. I just want to let you guys know about all those things that are going to be considered and all those things that the judges are going to look for to get the top prizes. Now the live bear class is often something, because they're very, very popular fish, it is often a class that is very, very dominant at a show. Look at this beautiful Latipina molly. He's showing up his fin. He's not scared whatsoever. Now not only are we at a fish show and he's just in a little tiny jar, but we've got a camera right at his face. There's people all around him. There's noise all around him, unfamiliar surroundings. That is a huge contender in a show. As long as all those other things point out well for him, that is a great contender for a show. Some of these swordtails that are beside him, some beautiful hybrid swordtails with long fins, double fins, great color. Just wonderful, wonderful fish for shows. And the cool thing about these shows is they're completely open to the public. And we got to start realizing if we don't get the public involved and we don't get the kids involved in this, our hobby is going to be in trouble as an organized hobby. So the more that we can get kids excited about coming to these shows, the better. Now, when I was looking at when we were showing you guys that oxalotl class, the one thing that I would suggest is that's something I would have had down here on the bottom row at kids level. Big cichlids, big goldfish, big showy fish. I'm not saying it's judging it differently on anything else, because that's not judging it. But if you want to get the kids involved, get those things that are going to be exciting to the fish, those big colorful things, those things that are going to charge the glass, the things that look really weird like an axolotl or something that looks like an alien, get those down at kid height. Let them really see those, and that'll generate more excitement. This event, the Keystone Clash 2019, was a massive undertaking for judging fish. There was 365 plus entries, including all the artwork. So we had a team of several judges, and we couldn't have done it without all of them. There was a lot of contenders. It took several hours to point the fish. But in the end, a beautiful, stunning, brown catfish took best of show. And it was a unanimous decision. It was a lot of fun. So sit back, and here's some highlights of some of the fish in the show. judging on fish is similar to dogs. You're judging on every characteristic based. I judge everything based on natural. What would the fish look like?
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely perfect in the wild. Granted, in the wild, they can eat up, all that sort of stuff. But what's the adult size? Maximum size. I want it at its absolute best size. I want its fins to be flawless. I want no damage from the net, no damage from the bucket, the transport, that sort of stuff. When you
details like a scale
yeah. But you also want that fish to show. Meaning there's certain fish that will not
minute detail, and that's when you're bringing the big fish.
For me, I have cichlids like that.
But Africans, they're at the tank, they attack the tank, they
drive
eat food,
3 hours
you
with
try and
the
show
gear.
a basic.
Dress them out, bang inside of the container. You don't want
How
to
you
be
show
in
that in the show.
Yeah,
So again,
multiple times that doesn't tear.
Portman is something that often involves people that really show fish, it involves training. What you do is you take this fish out of your big display tank 3 months, 4 months before you show. When you're taking it out, you give it a super hard run. Your scales, you split fins. This guy looks like a contender. And then you put him in a 10 or a smaller tank or something like that in your fishing tank.
You having fish?
And then you take care of it with the best water, the best food. That's when you start amping out live food or whatever you can give it that's a proper diet for it, of course. Then I really amp it up and get it ready to go. And then, after a week or so of being in that situation, and that tank's, you're taking it full, a fully set up tank, you're going to put it into a small tank, no nothing, no hides, nothing. It's stressed out. But after it's adjusted to that, it's calmed down, and it's accepted that, hey, I'm okay. Next step is take that tank, put it on your kitchen table. Put it in somewhere where there's lots of traffic in the house. Do that for a week. And after that, it's adjusted to that. Then start getting in its space. You know? Start getting in the tank space. Get your kids, get your family members, start throwing their face at it. Go get a clipboard. Start doing a clipboard around the tank. You know? It starts training the fish to accept the fact that I'm going to be in the worst possible stressful condition. I have no idea what the hell's going on. Imagine that. Caught out of your environment, thrown in a bucket, and the next time you see light, you're in a bare-ass tank, surrounded by other fish. And you have no idea. There's people everywhere. Face right against the glass and stuff. And that's why fish like that bifasciatum and cichlids are often species that are easy to dominate in the shows because they're big, they're showy, they're aggressive, they're not scared. But I love it when, like, from an awarding standpoint, I love it when you award a show and a nondescript little brown fish that would hide under wood its whole life wins the show. But that species still has to have the same pointing. Everything's judged against its natural self. So, like this guy here, looks great, beautiful color, but that fish can get to be 14, 15 inches in the wild. This one here is closely related, doesn't get as big, great color. This one's going to point much higher than this one, just on that. Then you got to look really hard at all the scales, because they're really easy to dislodge. Then you got to look really hard for damage on these guys. The front of their faces is very, very soft. They don't have much more diminutive scales on the face, so they often get a lot more damage when you catch them with a net. And little tiny scratches show up when you start. They don't show up here, but when you start putting a flashlight on it, they start showing up. And those are things that affect that cat.
And that's what you were doing with the fly.
Yep. So everything. So you got size. What's the full adult size? Now the problem being in captivity, a lot of fish will sometimes get decidedly larger than they would in the wild. African cichlids are the perfect example, right? Like you'd never see an imbuna over 4 inches in the wild, probably. But you grow some of them like 8 inches. Now, to me, I won't take points away from that, but I'm not also going to award more points because it's bigger. Now, I won't take points away for size. I would take points away if it were, say, an algae-eating imbuna, an algae scraper, and it's got a big belly. That's the wrong food. That's the wrong diet. It should never look like that. They should have a slightly sunken, concave belly, similar to this guy. It's got a little bit of an indent. That's a healthy fish. Okay? So if it was an imbuna and it was heavy, that would get points deducted on condition. And then there's fins, but deportment's the best one. Deportment is always the one, is that fish showing off the best it should be? And I don't know, you guys know Africans, but if you know what an epistogram is, little South American dwarf cichlids, they live literally in leaf litter at the very edge of the shallow water of the bay. That's their whole existence. How the hell do you show that off to its best ability in a tank? They're really, really hard to do. And 2 years ago, an Episto won Best of Show.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I love when something like that happens. But
That gets these guys all upset.
yeah, because the people that show the big bruisers, like big vieja, big firemouth, big red devils like the guy in there. Those are standard obvious ones. Peacocks from Lake Malawi. Those are standard obvious ones, easy to win a show. But as you evolve as a hobbyist, or if you're interested in showing fish, you'll learn very quickly that was the easy route. Because I could buy a bag of peacocks at the auction and have a contender in 2 years just by growing it up individually in a 10-gallon tank. Because he'll never see another fish, he'll never get beat up, you know, it's going to be perfect. And that makes it easy. But try and take something like an apistogramma and win a best of show, you've done some work. I love that. A beta one year, I've done this is my 3rd or 4th year. We had an apisto 1 year, and then a beta one, and then I think a fancy goldfish one. Or was it the beta one and goldfish was second? Something like that. So everyone's always assuming like that's a best in show contender. And like when I did my videos before, I said this is something that most people are going to look at hard for best of show. That big red devil, that beautiful firemouth, that nice little Murnay there. This guy, exceptional. And I'm not even looking at the African side of it. But it's always a team of judges. No one person can do all this. It would take you all day. So, so I'm judging this particular class right now. Rusty's judging certain classes. A couple of people are judging over there. Tom's is judging. And at the end, we'll all come together and we have to figure out what's best in show. Well, best in show is not derived strictly just on points. It's like, okay, Biggs, what in any of your classes did you have something that's a contender? And I'll say, okay, yeah, this one here. And he'll say, okay, well, I got this one here. And we might have 5 fish that we got to look at as a group. And then each one of us will look at it again. It might not be your field of strength, but you might see an aberration or something that they didn't see before, you know, and then all of a sudden we're going to judge it a little bit differently. Okay. This show is a little bit different in the fact that it is also sanctioned by the American Killifish Association, and that's why there's like a whole squad in that aisle. They're judging all those little tiny fish that have to be showed in pairs. Those ones are judged by the AKA standards, so it's totally different than everything else we're doing. So it's like almost like there's 2 shows in one.
Almost dope.
No worries.